This woman, who's quick to chop off heads at the slightest disagreement, is called the Red Queen, and this elegant and scheming woman is the White Queen. It's hard to believe that two people so different in appearance and personality could be biological sisters. The reason for their constant feud is all because of a little lie the White Queen told when she was young. One day, the White Queen sneaked a piece of egg tart from the kitchen and ran to her older sister, the Red Queen's room, to eat it. Nervous about getting caught, she dropped crumbs all over the floor. To hide the evidence, the White Queen kicked the crumbs under the bed. Unfortunately, the Red Queen returned and caught her in the act. "What are you doing?" The White Queen, feeling guilty, ran away. Meanwhile, their mother noticed the missing tart and questioned her daughters about who had eaten it. When no one confessed, their mother spotted the crumbs under the bed and asked the Red Queen what was under there. Remembering her sister's strange behavior, the Red Queen accused the White Queen of stealing the tart. Their mother looked at the White Queen and asked if she had done it, but the scheming White Queen, after hesitating, refused to admit it. Since the crumbs were found under the Red Queen's bed, their mother naturally believed her younger daughter. The falsely accused Red Queen ran out of the room, feeling wronged, but an unexpected accident occurred. Running too fast, she slipped and hit her head hard on a rock. This was the beginning of her nightmare. Due to the severe impact, her body stopped growing, but her head grew larger and larger until she became a monster. The White Queen, on the other hand, grew more and more beautiful and exuded an elegant aura. Even though both sisters had grown into adults, the White Queen never revealed the truth about what she had done and never apologized, causing their relationship to deteriorate further. To prevent his daughters from becoming enemies, the king intentionally passed the crown to the Red Queen, hoping to ease the tension between them. However, an unexpected event occurred during the coronation ceremony. Due to the Red Queen's abnormally large head, the crown couldn't fit on her. She tried to force it on, but ended up destroying it. The audience burst into laughter. The embarrassed Red Queen angrily told everyone to be quiet. However, a remark from the crowd completely ruined her. The Red Queen, consumed by rage, immediately threatened to behead them all. The king, sitting beside her, couldn't bear it anymore. He angrily rebuked the Red Queen for her lack of queenly demeanor and announced that he would pass the throne to the White Queen. These words shattered the last of the Red Queen's sanity. Believing that no one loved her, she flew into a rage, commanded her desolate dragon, and destroyed the city before leaving the place that had caused her so much pain. She set out to build a kingdom of her own. From then on, the two sisters became sworn enemies. They made a pact to have a decisive battle on the Day of Splendor, where their fates would be determined by the score. Clearly, the Red Queen, with her desolate dragon, held a significant advantage. The White Queen, aware of her own weakness, knew she needed to find the legendary dragon slayer as foretold in the prophecy scroll to have any chance of winning. But you'd never guess that this dragon slayer turned out to be a beautiful girl. The girl discovered a deep, bottomless well and leaned over to examine it curiously. Suddenly, her hand slipped and she fell right in. For a moment, it felt like she had fallen into another world, with strange things flashing around her. After a 2.5-minute descent, Alice finally landed at the bottom. She opened a door and stepped outside, finding herself in a fairy tale-like landscape. As she was still taking it all in, several peculiar creatures found her. They then brought her before a caterpillar, who was the prophet of this place. He asked Alice to look at the prophecy scroll, which stated that she would wield a holy sword and slay the demon. Alice immediately denied it, saying that she was not the one, as she thought it was all just a dream. But just then, a huge beast suddenly charged out, accompanied by the Red Queen's soldiers, who began to indiscriminately capture everyone. Alice still thought it was all a dream. Facing the attacking beast, she remained motionless. Jerry, seeing her suicidal behavior, quickly jumped onto the beast's head and shot an arrow into its eye. Enraged, the beast grabbed Alice. It was then that she realized it was all real. She quickly escaped with the chubby brothers, but the one-eyed creature picked up the prophecy scroll that had fallen to the ground. Realizing the severity of the situation, he immediately reported to the Red Queen that Alice would slay the dragon. The Red Queen panicked and immediately ordered her subordinates to capture Alice with all their might. Meanwhile, Alice had already reunited with the Mad Hatter, who firmly believed that she was the one who could slay the dragon. However, Alice didn't believe it, thinking they must have mistaken her for someone else. But before she could explain, the Red Queen's pursuers arrived. The Mad Hatter quickly gave Alice a shrinking potion, and she instantly became the size of a palm. He then hid Alice in a teapot. Unexpectedly, one of the pursuers was a hound. It immediately smelled Alice, then turned and left. In this way, they seemed to have both revealed and concealed their tracks from the pursuers. Afterwards, the Mad Hatter told Alice that to defeat the Red Queen's giant, they must find the legendary sage. Only he, wielding the holy arrow, could slay the dragon as prophesied. However, before he could finish speaking, the soldiers caught up with them. Seeing that there was no escape, the Mad Hatter placed Alice on his hat and threw it, flying 2.5 kilometers away. Alice was safe, but the Mad Hatter was captured by the soldiers. Soon, the next day, the Hound found Alice using his sense of smell. It turned out that his family had also been captured by the Red Queen, so he was forced to help her. To rescue his family and the Mad Hatter, the Hound took Alice to the Red Queen's castle. Alice then crawled through a crack in the wall, but as soon as she entered, she saw the Red Queen playing royal golf with animals. Alice quickly went to untie a hedgehog, but unexpectedly encountered a rabbit who was coming to retrieve the ball. The rabbit recognized Alice immediately. Knowing that he was the rabbit who had been in the Mad Hatter's hat, Alice took the cake and started eating it. Unexpectedly, because she ate too much, her body began to grow rapidly. In the end, she was exposed to everyone. Fortunately, the Red Queen didn't recognize Alice. When questioned, Alice simply said that she was too tall and had been ostracized, so she had wandered here. The Red Queen, feeling a sense of kinship, immediately invited her to the castle as a guest. Later, Alice learned from the rabbit that the holy sword was in the castle, but was guarded by a large beast. To get the holy arrow, Alice used the beast's eyeball, which she had obtained from Jerry, as an exchange. Grateful to regain its sight, the beast took Alice to the White Queen. When the Red Queen learned that the holy arrow had been stolen, she was furious and immediately ordered her men to behead the Mad Hatter on the chopping block. With a sinister smile, the executioner swung his axe, but instead of the expected bloody scene, only a hat floated slowly into the air. Suddenly, a Tom's head appeared from under the hat. It turned out that this was a trick played by the Cheshire Cat, and the real Mad Hatter had already escaped. Soon, the day of splendor arrived. Although Alice hated war and was afraid of killing, only she could kill the desolate dragon. Reluctantly, the White Queen led her soldiers into battle, knowing that defeat was inevitable, but determined to fight to the end. Just then, a change came over Alice. She overcame her fear and decided to fight for justice. On the giant chessboard battlefield, a great battle was about to begin. Meanwhile, the Red Queen also led her army to prepare for the final battle. Both sides soon arrived at the agreed-upon location. First, they had to send a representative each to battle. The Red Queen naturally sent out her trump card, the desolate dragon. The White Queen, of course, sent out Alice. Looking at the Red Queen's evil dragon, Alice showed no fear. While the dragon was wasting words, she directly shot an arrow and cut off its tongue. Seeing this, the White Queen felt a bit disgusted. Alice wanted to take advantage of the situation and pursue, but she was instantly knocked down by the angry dragon. Even though she held the decapitation sword that could kill the dragon, she was still no match for it. Seeing Alice losing ground, the Mad Hatter, behind her, dishonorably attacked without warning. The Mad Hatter's illegal attack triggered a swift engagement between the two armies. Seizing this opportunity, Alice climbed to the top of the ruins, swung her sword in mid-air, severing the dragon's head. With the dragon's defeat, the Red Queen's crown flew towards the White Queen. Thus, the White Queen, representing justice, emerged victorious. To maintain her image of benevolence, the White Queen exiled her sister and her followers to a remote border. Upon hearing this news, the naive Red Queen was actually quite happy, as it meant she could be with her beloved knight forever. However, not everyone was as naive as she was. In order to maintain his power, the knight publicly assassinated the Red Queen to show his loyalty. Even though the assassination failed, he still demanded that the White Queen kill her sister, as he had never loved the Red Queen and was deeply repulsed by her deformed head. Upon learning the truth, the Red Queen stood there, stunned. Her inner world had already collapsed, but her sister, the White Queen, showed no concern. She seemed to have forgotten that her sister had never harmed her, let alone exiled her to a remote border. All she wanted from her sister was a simple apology. However, what the White Queen didn't expect was that, in pursuit of this apology, the Red Queen would eventually destroy the entire world. You simply cannot imagine that this beautiful and elegant queen would have such an ugly sister with an enormous head constantly filled with rage. However, even more unbelievable is the fact that her sister was actually more beautiful than her when they were young, and the reason she became what she is now was because of a lie her sister told when they were children. At that time, the White Queen was kind and obedient. To avoid being punished by her mother for stealing sweets, she lied and blamed her sister. Faced with her mother's scolding, the Red Queen argued, but no matter how much she explained, it couldn't overcome the adult's favoritism. She ran out of the palace in grievance and accidentally fell, hitting her head hard on the steps. When she woke up from the coma, her life had changed. Because of her enlarged head, she was ridiculed by many. Not only did her parents become prejudiced against her, but her own throne was also taken away by her sister. Now she was even exiled to a remote border by the White Queen. Fortunately, she met a Time Lord in this place. Upon learning of the Red Queen's plight, the Time Lord doted on her and even prepared a special gift for her birthday. However, these were not what the Red Queen wanted. What she wanted most was the Time Lord's time machine, because with it, she could travel through time, change history, and take back everything that belonged to her. In a stroke of luck, the Red Queen finally got hold of the time machine. She immediately sent people to capture the White Queen, and then activated the time machine and traveled back in time with the White Queen. She thought she would go back to the past to change history, but unexpectedly, they returned to their childhood. Seeing their mother, the Red Queen asked the White Queen the same question she had asked in the past. However, the White Queen's answer was still the same as before. Hearing this, the Red Queen completely broke down. What terrified the Red Queen even more was that she was instantly covered in rust. It turned out that people from two different time periods couldn't meet each other. Otherwise, the time machine would have side effects, and the whole world would be completely petrified. Alice, who was chasing after them, saw this and realized that something was terribly wrong. She picked up the time machine on the ground and ran forward frantically. She had to return to the original world and return the time machine to the Eternal City. Meanwhile, the White Queen wanted to escape, but seeing her sister turn to stone, a sense of guilt welled up inside her. She picked up her petrified sister and ran forward with all her might. She never thought that a casual lie she told when she was young would cause such great harm to the Red Queen. Gradually, the whole world was sealed up, and everyone was petrified. Only Alice was still running, but how could she outrun time? Just as Alice was about to return the time machine, she stopped in her tracks. Time was forever frozen at this moment. The world without the flow of time was like a painting, with desolation everywhere. Suddenly, the time machine in Alice's hand began to generate energy and returned to its original position under the force of gravity. Soon, everything came back to life. After experiencing this crisis, the White Queen finally realized her mistakes. The Red Queen's eyes were filled with tears.